Hi, and welcome to the New Rules for Negotiating 10-Minute Learning Series, a short but comprehensive series of contract negotiation webinars specifically designed for people who negotiate complex customer-supplier agreements. This webinar is based on information in my book, The Vested Outsourcing Manual. Because some of you have asked me how to encourage suppliers to make continuous improvements in the relationship, today I'll be talking about how to foster a continuous improvement relationship. Okay, this is the first step, internal alignment. Your organization must align across departments and teams horizontally and also from the top to the bottom vertically to be successful. In this webinar, I'll focus on how you, the customer, can align itself in order to foster a continuous improvement environment before you realign with the supplier and ask them to implement an environment of continuous improvement. Hi, I'm Jeanette Knighton, the author and co-author of 3 books, including Getting to E, The Vested Outsourcing Manual, and Negotiation Rules. I work with contract professionals to provide tactical, customized contract negotiation training and coaching from the planning phase through to execution. I've worked with both sales and purchasing, usually at the same company, and sometimes even at the same time. Collaboration is a process, not an event, and this is the vested collaboration wheel that you can find in the Vested Outsourcing Manual. I describe in that book the negotiation philosophy, what's in it for we, and then we describe it in even greater detail in my book, Getting to We. The philosophy, what's in it for we, is distinct to the traditional what's in it for me, hey, what about me kind of negotiation and relationship attitude. So let's talk about this collaborative process, and let's talk about how it starts with you, the customer. The first step is internal alignment. So as the wheel goes around clockwise, the first step begins with aligning yourself internally. To work collaboratively with external partners, internal business partners must be on board with cooperation, if not full-on collaboration. Collaboration starts obviously with internal alignment. The internal stakeholders must invest in the deal by performing the required daily, monthly, and quarterly activities. This is tough. I have a lot of people who want continuous improvement from the suppliers, but they don't create the environment to analyze the workflows. We call it taxonomy of processes and a workload allocation to determine where there can be improvement. And even if the supplier brings the improvement to the customer, if internal stakeholders are not meeting regularly in order to discuss these issues, then they just sort of fall apart. You need to be able to hold internal stakeholders accountable somehow for attending these meetings. That's usually the champion's job, and it also helps if it's documented in the contract. If you'd like to learn more about how to do that, please see my April 2017 learning lesson. Finally, you cannot expect to hold external stakeholders accountable for continuous improvement if your own team is not there first and aligned and committed to cooperation, collaboration, and continuous improvement. The second step is then to analyze data. This is not a gut instinct process. This is an analytical process. This is a process that I have done several times in outsourcing relationships where I've worked with customers and their teams to do a taxonomy of processes, a workload allocation, and identify opportunities for continuous improvement, with the larger, beefier areas for continuous improvement requiring a business case analysis from the customer and the supplier side to see what could potentially be improved and what it would cost, and then what the return on that investment would look like. When you created your agreement, you created a data collection and sharing process, ideally, reporting. So use that reporting process in addition to any other meetings that you hold to determine where there can in fact be a continuous improvement. Data sharing, though, is not data dumping. Analyze the data to look for patterns, trends, disruptions, maladaptions, and inaccurate baseline assumptions. What that means is as you're looking for areas to improve, you're looking for things that don't seem to work right. You're looking for redundancies. You're looking for those sort of blips in processes that create anomalies, invoices that seem out of whack, statements of work that are no longer aligned with what's actually being done, and then compare that to the assumptions that you have for where you should be at the relationship at this point in time. Then you jointly interpret the data. And so this is before you've aligned externally with the service provider to give a thumbs up or a go on the continuous improvement. But what you're doing at this point is you are bringing some of the team members from the supplier together to look at this data to tell you what they think is driving these data anomalies. The third step then is you actually get down to the brass tacks of identifying what the improvement is going to look like. What this means is you actually start to put some meat on those bones. The way that I've done it in the past is where there's been a taxonomy of processes and a workload allocation. We have in the spreadsheet a column, usually to the right, that has ideas for continuous improvement. We call those internally first to determine which ones we think a service provider can do for us, the customer, as opposed to what we should be doing ourselves. Once we've identified that, then we bring a committee together, cross-functional committee, and we actually start to look at what that continuous improvement would look like and what the impact could be on our end, the customer end. So you identify improvements in your own processes, that the service provider can fix. Then you give the provider incentives to implement the fix. So in other words, you provide an opportunity or a stretch goal where there can be a bonus over and above what they're currently earning to make that continuous improvement. Obviously, with the idea being that the continuous improvement reduces costs at the customer's end. So investing in service provider time and energy to create that improvement and providing a bonus is well worth it when compared to what the long-term return on that investment would be. So there's an initial cost savings, there's an initial risk reduction and exposure, but then there's also a long-term cost avoidance. Most changes that you encounter will be minor, and this is so true. Some of them are simple, like setting up an email inbox that people check. It's kind of funny. It's like, oh, that's a continuous improvement. But others can have a really significant change, and I've also identified those and put those together with the business case and then worked the business case through the customer's financial team for approval by the champions. And that's a pretty exciting process when you can see several months of work come to fruition and the customer approve a fairly significant continuous improvement project. Complex change, however, is going to require an increasing level of data analysis and internal alignment in order to meet opportunities for the improvement. What that means is that you constantly are going to have to verify the data that you're getting to make sure that what's being done is returning the results that you anticipate, and you have to have internal alignment to keep going. Sometimes there can be turf wars that can interfere with this process of actually identifying and implementing the improvement. Sometimes it can be a sort of, it's not my idea, so I'm not real sure if I'm behind this kind of atmosphere, and that can really derail the continuous improvement initiative. And again, this is at the customer side. These are the problems that I've seen customers have. The governance team needs to formalize the changes in the agreement and then bring the contract administrator in to document those formalizations of changes into the actual contract itself. Now, if you want to know more about that, give me a call because I've done this kind of work as well. The final step is then the external realignment with the supplier. This is the last step. Once you've done the first 3 steps, then you want to formally bring the supplier into the process. This is the time when your organization aligns with the supplier organization to discuss the improvement opportunities. People with increasing levels of responsibility and authority are going to have to make attending all the governance meetings a high priority because continuous improvement is disruptive. And with that disruption is going to have to come greater governance and alignment to make sure that the train doesn't come off the track, so to speak. The leadership team cannot expect the day-to-day team to implement the continuous improvement goals on their own. I cannot stress that enough. These folks are typically not empowered to make the right kinds of changes. So the leadership team, think your 3-layer cake of governance. Your middle management has got to really help with the strategy and the implementation and make the difficult decisions to help the day-to-day team work on the continuous improvement initiative. It cannot sit entirely at the day-to-day level. Those people do not typically have the level of authority that I've seen required in order to make a continuous improvement initiative thoroughly successful. If you'd like to learn more, please get a copy of the Vested Outsourcing Manual, where in the last section of the book, Living as We talk about the need for continuous collaboration. And of course, you can always call me if you'd like me to help you with your continuous improvement project.